Hello, it's the new year 2024.
20-something.
It's 20-something and it's Frame Rate, the show where we rate frames that have been ordered in quick succession for your viewing pleasure. I'm Abe.
I'm Mike. We're regular-sized monsters. And to add to the regular-sized monster series, what's the other line? You want a taste of my sewage pipe? Here he is, Tom Reimann.
Hey! That's the best intro I've ever gotten. Wow.
I think that is. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. If I found it in my notes. You want a taste of my sewage pipe?
I like to think of myself as an average-sized monster.
Yeah.
With an average size sewage pipe.
Yeah.
The film we are covering today, the opening text is regular-sized monster series. And series made me wonder, and I didn't look into it. Are there a bunch of these? Is there no, there's not Tetsuo,
There's a short,
the second man?
No. It was just, I think it's a translation deal. You know,
Sure.
He could have been trying to create a, cinematic universe. I don't know. I could be wrong about that, but it doesn't have multiple iterations of this story.
Not even from other, I sort of got the impression that this was maybe this filmmaker's contribution to a project by a collective. So no other filmmakers did any.
It kind of does feel like that. It's like a Dogma 95 film or something
It felt like a prompt a little bit.
Yeah. A little bit. It's experimental.
Create a short horror film about a small monster.
Right, largely considered to be the beginning of Japanese cyberpunk. That's what the wikis say.
Okay.
We haven't said it yet. We are covering Tetsuo, the Iron Man from 1989, a very cult film, I'd say, experimental film. And we have
I try to say it in a way where the person has no idea what they're in for. Hey, you should check out Tetsuo, the Iron Man.
The Iron Man.
Just
Iron
totally
Man.
misrepresent.
For a fun romp through the city.
Robert Downey Jr. as an Iron Man.
Before we continue, I want to give a shout out to the Theo. 3 times a charm, Theo.
Wow. Picking 3 flicks. What a hero.
Yeah. Pick the flick tier. You can go to patreon.com/smallbeans. If it is open, it is a highly sought after tier, but sometimes it opens up when someone hasn't grabbed it. And for some 150 smackaroos, you choose the movie we talk about.
The frames we rate.
The frames we rate. And, we're not going to watch your porn that you made.
No, but we're watching Tetsuo the Iron Man, so we'll go pretty far.
We're watching a porn that this guy made.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Theo clearly, I understand Theo now. Theo wants us all to go insane. He's trying to drive this thing off the rails because he gave us Wake and Fright too.
Yeah, he's cackling.
I've not seen that, and I don't actually think this is pornography. I was being humorous.
Yes, it's definitely a touchy subject.
And penetrative. It is penetrative.
It is.
Yeah, it's a non-conventional narrative. It's mostly flashbacks and dreams. So if that's not your thing, you can skip it, I guess. But it's supposed to depict a deterioration of these people's minds, and that gives it an experimental quality, I would say. So we usually open Frame Rate up by asking our guest, who we chose Tom Reimann this time, because we were like, let's show this fucker this movie and see what he does with that business. What'd you think of it, man?
Yeah, this movie. I don't want to.
I already love the tone of your voice already. It's good.
I don't want to say I liked this movie, but I don't love this genre of J-horror, the extreme body horror J-horror genre, like Tokyo Gore Police and things like that. Ichi the Killer, although I wouldn't put Ichi the Killer in this category, so forget I said that. This is more extreme, like Tokyo Gore Police or like The Guyver. So I'm not really into this genre of body horror, this extreme body horror, but I did really like how experimental the film is and how surreal it is, but still how even amidst all of that, it still managed to, it's a very simple narrative, but it still managed to tell a surprisingly clear narrative.
Okay, great. Maybe Tom can explain it to me then.
Oh, sure. About this dude
I feel like
that
I
gets
got it, but I feel
infected
like
with a cyborg blood. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I feel like I have the same opinion as Tom a little bit. If he's getting what I think he's getting at, which is, I got it all, but like it did suffer with clarity throughout. Like I was kind of unsure, like who dat, where they, like that was a lot of my questions in my brain. But then it usually got resolved.
Usually like, there's some stuff I'm unclear on, like whether the guy they hit with their car is like inside his body, like the main character's body, or if he's inside his own body. It seems like he can see what the main character is seeing. I think it's both, because like he's infected with that guy's blood, right? So that's what's turning him into a cyborg. So like that guy is able to see what our main character is seeing and experiencing. So we'll cut to the shot of this weirdo who's sitting in like this pool of like offal surrounded by wires. Yeah, yes, a metal womb. That's a great way to describe it, because it's exactly what it is. Just clearly inside of a body and like reacting to the horrible things that our protagonist is being forced to do by his new metal body. So I think part of it is like the evil guy's consciousness living in like the mutated blood inside this dude, and then also I know what you did last summer to him. So he's laying out in a field somewhere, still alive, and he eventually comes to, and his consciousness at least gravitates back to the guy's apartment.
It's like a salary man and his girlfriend that hit our metal obsessed maniac.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite details about the movie is, for no reason, they're both really down to fuck.
Because they're maniacs too. It was the collision.
They're maniacs.
It was the collision of three maniacs.
So they hit him, throw him into the forest, and then they like, let's fuck at him.
Yeah,
kind
let's
of
fuck
like
him.
They have sex in front of the guy that they hit and run. So I thought that the hit and run made car parts embed themselves in his body, because then they have the doctor saying he has metal in his head and he doesn't understand how he's still alive. Can you explain in a nutshell? I'm sorry, I'm making you kind of repeat yourself. Is the womb guy inside Tetsuo?
I think he's both. Like, I think
because he exists in the world as well.
He does, because we see him at first putting a rod into his leg because he's obsessed with Olympic sprinters. We see it begins with a montage of all these wires and all these cutouts of Olympic sprinters. And in the end of the movie, he's dressed like an Olympic sprinter. The first thing we see him do is cut open his own leg and shove rebar in there, presumably to make himself stronger legs. And they also gets like jet engine ankles.
Yeah, he flies all around town with little rocket feet.
Little rocket feet, it's pretty sweet.
One of my favorite details about the Olympic runners is that as soon as he injects that pipe into his femur or whatever is going on over there, they all explode as if to say, "Oh fuck, we're dead."
He's made us obsolete. Yeah. But then he sees that the wound is infected with maggots, and he screams like a baby and runs down the street sobbing. So I guess he wasn't that strong after all.
Yeah, and I think to kind of more to the point of your question is like, so he's a metal obsessed man, and then he gets hit by a car, which gives him more metal.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so there's some kind of telepathic connection between him and the girlfriend and the guy, the salary man.
Yeah.
So because he later kind of goes on to say like, I've been haunting you, basically.
Yeah. I think they got some of his DNA on him when he put him in the car, because we see from Metal Maniac's point of view that they're loading his body into the back of their car, and it's Tetsuo, the salary man, who's doing it. So he's the one that actually touched his body.
And then did the hit and run. Okay.
Yeah, and they did the hit and run. So then when we see him later and he's shaving and he has a little piece of metal growing out of his face and he touches it and it pops like a zit. That's like when it begins.
That was kind of cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And the rest of the day, he just sort of gradually gets taken over more and more by like this cybernetic infection. And then later on in the movie, when Metal Maniac births himself out of dead girlfriend's body, he says something to the effect of, I bet you're wondering why all my metal is rusty. Well, it's because like the metal that I implanted in myself was already rusting, and then that metal fused with my genetics. So now like this rusted metal is just part of my genetics. Yeah, I'm a rust bucket.
Want to know how I got these scars?
Yeah. Exactly.
But it really is striking and dreamlike, and
very much so.
Almost no audible description of it will. So if you're just looking for pure texture and something that you ain't seen that every day. I do think it's a good one of those. It reminded me of Eraserhead. It reminded me of Pi, Man Bites Dog. Just things where it's so raw and so weird that you're almost surprised at the credits at the end because you realize how many professional people worked on this to put it together. And you're like, they all embraced this vision, and it's a pretty crazy vision. So good on them, you know?
Yeah, it does
more on that later.
It does a good job. The rapid fire imagery and how quickly it changes, and that it's experimental to the point of it's almost mixed media.
Yeah,
because it will.
Well,
cut
there's
to
a lot
like
of stop motion. Yeah,
stop motion. It'll cut to footage of watching a TV screen. It does a lot of weird things and breaks its format all of the time. So it all adds up into this surreal mess. But it does a good job of, and I think I've not seen Man Bites Dog actually, but I've seen Pi. It's been a while.
Oh, you should.
But
Pi.
the thing that both Pi and this movie have in common is it's both an impressionistic representation of what it is to lose your mind.
Yeah.
and intensely intimate. Like you are that guy.
A personal
You're living through
psychosis.
it.
Yeah. You are experiencing what it's like to not know if you are in a delusion or not.
If
And
you are a metal
it's-
man.
If you're a fucking
It's also
metal man.
mostly
And guess what? It involves dancing and jerking around with squishy sounds.
and fucking sick industrial techno, dude.
Yeah.
Oh man,
That techno theme.
I was searching for
so
this on
good.
YouTube to see if I could watch it free on YouTube. You can't, but there are so many playlists of the soundtrack. People really
The
dig
soundtrack
this soundtrack.
bucks.
It's almost Kraftwerk. Like it's metal. It's what everything in the movie is, geared toward. It's like metal clangs and really draggy synth. It's good.
It's all in service of, and I don't know if you guys maybe landed on this, but it feels like a very, I don't want to say rote idea, but like the idea of technology taking over our lives and taking away our humanity, right? And it's like an exploration of that theme, which
I
is
think
like
we've gotten to the moment because I want to talk about this
sorry.
a lot. No, I think it's a very.
but
It's an alley-oop going on.
So when I watch a movie like this, when it's so experimental and it's very surreal, like I pay even more attention to like it's something you always say, Abe, where you talk about like, okay, what's the first shot of the movie, because that means something. This is the first thing they all decided that you were going to see this image first, so it has to mean something. So like throughout this movie, I'm like, okay, it's very surreal. So these images, what do these images mean? And it's like it's all in service of as best as my dumb brain can figure. It's all in service of that pretty basic idea that's been around in fiction for a while, but it does it in such a fucking crazy, gnarly way.
I mean, it's
like
thoroughly
really
punk rock, right?
Very
Like that's
much so,
kind
yeah.
of.
Yeah,
I think that's what punk is in film. Is that it can be a lot of things, but I think one of the grand uniters is that posit you kind of just made about like the sanctity of the thing I say all the time about first images, like that's your thematic resonance. That's what you're telling the audience. Hey, listen and focus on that kind of postcard because that's what the rest of the movie's about. It's like a fuck you to that. It's like, don't give me standards, which is very punk rock. Right?
I thought it was intentionally beyond like parsing in that way. But it's funny because even if you try to be surreal and experimental and dreamlike, things mean things. So it's so easy to put, like Tom said that and I went, oh, of course, it could easily be read that way. Even though I don't think it's supposed to be read as anything. I think it's an experiment in a man turning into metal. I don't know if there was an intentionality further than that because it really is just a show.
Can I tell you the reason why I think that?
Sure. Yeah, please.
It's because it's a combination of that with the first image thing that Abe was talking about. It's the first sequence we see is crazy metal maniac, hunched over, sweating, desperate. Like
everyone's so sweaty in this movie. The doctor is sweating.
It's a gross movie, but like I think that's like the humanity aspect. I mean, it's also like a bit of a contagion film too.
Mm-hmm.
But like, so it's claustrophobic. He's got all these wires around him. It's this. There's the hint of there's not any actual violence yet. I mean, there is when he starts cutting into his leg, but there's like the threat of violence and just. I guess his proximity to all this gnarled metal and wires, and he's so sweaty and desperate.
His face is abstracted. You don't get to see his face.
Right. Yes. It's a lot of abstract. Yeah. It's a lot of, it's very impressionistic in a lot of ways, but it's that with all of the images of the Olympic sprinters, and then he's cutting into his leg to shove this bar in there. It's so like the implication of the sequence is he's trying to make himself better, more human than human with technology.
It's
so
the $6 million man with like $20.
Yes. That's the idea I had in my head the whole. So I had that idea in my head the whole movie. So I never stopped thinking about that. So that's kind of how I was viewing the movie through that lens.
Well, and at the end, the longest line of dialogue in the whole movie is, I feel great. We can mutate the whole world into metal. We can rust the world into the dust of the universe. That sounds interesting. Yes, our love can destroy this whole fucking world. That's pretty punk.
Yeah.
It's pretty punk.
Yeah.
And there's kind of, we could always do, like, if he had scenes early on, like if this was a more conventional film, which it's not, and it shouldn't be, but like if it did, and it wasn't as punk rock, it would have scenes where people's lives are kind of being taken over by computers and telecommunications, because that would set up the idea that the world is sick and needs like, and it's going to, like, in a horror way, there's going to be some kind of justice for that. Now, let me put my weeb kimono on and get my katana blade.
He always leaves it open kimono.
My katana.
Yeah, with my ponytail. In the 80s, the whole idea behind the economy for Japan historically was that they kind of closed off their borders and they got rid of, like, they stopped doing agriculture and stuff like that, and they started doing telecommunications, computers, like microchips, and they went crazy. It went crazy. So there's this kind of bit like assumption or something that feels like it's a priori made by the filmmaker, where it's like, I don't have to make this statement. We're all living in the now. We all know what's happened to Japan. Japan has totally transformed its industry overnight, or at least, in the span of 10 years. So that movie is obviously a reflection of that. Doesn't need in a film to be scoped out and like made timeless for viewers who may not understand that. Is it the job of the filmmaker to feed us all of the useful information for us to understand? Is the true question I think I would like to get into. But I don't know.
No, I don't think so. Not when it's satire.
Yeah,
and I think this is at least partially satirical, because it's drawing on the zeitgeist or the commonality of the time. So it may be harder to parse the further you get from its release, but I think it's still totally relevant, because we're all still glued to phones and shit, and we're all being replaced by automated AI and automated cash registers, checkouts rather, things like that. So I think it's. I don't think that's I said what I thought. I don't think so. When it's satirical, I think you can. They have a responsibility to give you enough information to connect the dots. I think, or at least enough information to connect the dots in the direction that they want you to, if that makes sense. Because
totally.
Because I'm a firm believer in it's okay to be ambiguous, but you should at least be able to. I don't think you're. I'm not sure. But I think it's. I fully fall on the side of I don't think the filmmaker needs to give you all of the information. 100%.
Yeah, it's also not an is-ought thing.
Yeah,
I prefer the propaganda. Like that sounds derogatory, but like as I always say,
movie with a point of view.
Yeah, a kind of political opinion in more of a capital P sense of people interacting with each other. Like. That's what movies are about, and I like to see, because I don't know every human, I like to see the background and kind of prologue, so I know what I'm getting into. And that has become, for the majority of movies, the premier way in which we do things. I prefer it that way. I like Coen Brothers, but this also has validity, is, I guess, my overall opinion.
Yeah. So I'm so shocked and awed by just the texture of the film that it never occurred to me to parse it as satire or about anything. Like I was just enjoying it as a roller coaster ride, and I think we should talk about how it works as that as well. So, but
Totally.
hearing you guys talk makes me realize things like, oh, his blood went on the lady, and then the lady became a robot monster. So it's contagious, I guess, with the blood. I didn't even pick that out.
It wasn't just his blood that went on the lady.
It was his metal stuff.
He
Yeah.
kills her with his drill dick.
Oh,
Yep.
I meant the first lady that he infects, and she
lady.
chases him
The
and
chase
hands his
scene
ass
at
to
the
him.
beginning
Yeah.
on the train platform.
Yeah, so okay, guys who think this means something, let's drill down on this. There's a part where he gets a rotating drill dick and he's upset. He doesn't want to rape the woman with the drill dick, even though
he
it
tries to
seems
separate
like it's,
himself.
Right, even though the movie is like, that is destined to happen. We're going to do that. And eventually it's actually, I mean, it's implied consensual. She chooses to sit down on the drill
Kind
dick
of.
and
Yes
blood
and no.
just sprays up the wall behind her. And it's as gruesome as you can imagine. It's body horror at its finest. What does that mean satirically? I challenge either of you.
Well, because
Is
they were
it
sex
technology
maniacs.
is fucking us?
That's the specific punishment he's receiving. This is as much of it as I
Right.
thought, because they had sex in front of the guy while he was dying. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Tim. So like their punishment is sexual in nature, and he has that nightmare when he first gets infected, and he has that horrible day. And he goes to bed, and he has a nightmare of his girlfriend becoming a metal dominatrix and raping him with a vacuum cleaner, basically.
Yeah, that was
That's like
She shoves a
filling
tube
him
fully
with
up in-
liquid
really
metal.
impressive
Yeah.
footage.
Best
I've ever seen.
Yeah. It's showing him being like infected with it by their like sexual, I don't want to say depravity, but like, I mean, that's kind of what it is when you're fucking in front of a
Perversion.
guy that you just hit with your car. That's depraved.
And you read that
also-
as a dream.
It is a dream. That is a dream. But
Wow.
Yeah.
I interpreted that as a dream.
It took me a while, but I interpret it because like his skin isn't always the same.
Yeah.
So you can kind of tell what's a dream and what's not a dream until like the final act where it's like, fuck it all. Everything's
Where he's just a
everything.
big
And-
booger monster.
It's like, it kind of goes Akira with it, you know?
Oh,
When
yeah.
he loses his face, his head just becomes a sheet of metal formed into like a cone. Just completely, he's gone now. There is no
He looks
man.
directly to camera and goes, I am Iron Man.
I am
Uh,
Then
but,
he rocket skates away with this song.
it's so good.
Yeah, it's good.
I want to also point your attention to if you buy the industry thing that I was saying earlier about telecommunications and computers and, early, ways in which we reached out and used kind of phones and devices to interact with each other a little bit more at the birth of that. This is kind of someone looking at that. Do you remember what the first scene between the girlfriend and the man was? They're having phone sex. So I think
Is it
that
sex? He just says
Yeah.
hello, and she says hello, and they say hello back and forth while he reads the paper. That's phone sex. I've been
I think it's phone
misinformed.
sex because there's sexy imagery going on, and like that's supposed to be what's in his head.
Yeah.
I took it that way. It was very erotic to me.
I interpreted that as a bit of a fugue state of his, because they show him just repeating hello over and over again as he's reading the newspaper, and then it
Mushy,
cuts
mushy.
to mush mush, and then she's saying the same thing, and then it cuts to a different angle of the same scene, presumably, and the conversation progresses where he says hello again, and she's like, "Are you okay?" So like the implication there was like he's just been saying hello over and over again, and in his mind she's just been saying the same thing to him. But I interpreted that as
reality.
No, you guys could be right.
The disease is taking him over, and he's like not realizing that he was stuck in like he's in a delusion right there. Is how I
Right.
interpreted it.
I think you guys can be right. I could be wrong or reaching on that. I just have this chip on my shoulder where I want to look at every experimental film and I can't help myself but go like, secretly, deep down, you're the propaganda too.
You're nasty
It's
little
all
freaks.
propaganda, you freaks.
Well, I mean, like I
You're
said,
saying
I've
stuff, you
my-
idiot.
my interpretation of the movie was like as basic as it gets, like technology bad.
Yeah, that's also-
it is. I mean, you're still right. If I'm right, then you're right, Abe.
That's well said, because at the end of the day, you said I'm right, which I love. But yeah, it can just be a body horror because there's cool shit like the little tendrils that come out of his fingers. Like at one point, there's a stop motion sequence.
It's high effort. The effects in it are very
good
high
for
effort
the low budget.
And
there's a part his skull gets loses its skin.
His skull gets stripped away.
That's the coolest.
And
that's
unbuilt
the
and crumbled and then replaced with metal parts. Yeah, that's a great shot.
When I was watching that, I was like, that is a banger.
It's like a time-lapse video of decay, if you've ever watched one.
Exactly.
It's exactly what it looks like.
Oh,
and
yeah,
they must have studied.
We've all seen it.
The dead fox. Or even like there's a famous one of a rotting bowl of fruit, too.
Yeah.
If you don't want to watch a fox decompose. But it looks exact. They must have studied it because it looks exactly like that, and it's perfectly done. There's so much good artistry and talent in this movie.
Yeah, really using all aspects of that 8mm camera that they got, which just goes to show.
Yeah,
you shoot on an iPhone if you need to.
Well, the black and white works in their favor here because for one, it obscures all the details, which works for production-wise because it lets them cheat a little bit with the effects.
Yep.
But it also works thematically and narrative-wise because it's this grotesque body horror movie about the blurring of lines of humanity, and it works in its favor that it's black and white. It helps the industrial theme,
right. Blood looks like oil.
Also, the filmmakers,
it's indistinguishable from it. Exactly.
The filmmakers have said that it was black and white intentionally to make it just one notch less disturbing, saying, quote, they wanted audiences to at least finish the film. I love knowing that you're making something so gross that you decide to tone it down. I mean, I'm sure it was a budget consideration as well, but it's just a power move, especially considering this was based on a play that one guy wrote, directed, and performed in college. Can you imagine being the live audience at Tetsuo the Iron Man, the play? And it's just a college student, right? It's not like an established playwright. It's just some college kid, and you go to his show, and it's fucking this. That would be incredible. How do you do this as a play? I need to know.
Who's in the audience?
You call the police.
Martin Scorsese. He's always in the audience.
Killers of the Flower Moon is a beat-by-beat ripoff of this.
No,
the man loves. There's
a guy. Leonardo DiCaprio has a carburetor for a face in Act 3. Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah.
See, I could have sworn that the car imparted metal parts onto him.
I think you're right.
They do
you're
sexy
absolutely
shots
right.
of the car. Okay.
You're absolutely right. Like the grill becomes part of the womb that Metal Maniac is trapped in because that's what hit him in the face, presumably. And then our main character, Tetsuo, starts growing parts of the car. And I assume that's part of his like Sisyphean punishment.
Yeah, I wrote he's being demonically punished.
Yes. Because this Metal Maniac we haven't mentioned apparently can also control metal like Magneto.
Oh, yeah. He starts crushing metal pots and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
While zooming around on his rocket feet. What did you make of the moment that he's zooming around holding a bouquet of flowers as if he's going to run up to the guy and give him a really nice bouquet of flowers?
Okay.
I think it's because he wants to say, I love you.
Here's how I interpreted that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's his consciousness speeding away from his body where they left it into the girlfriend who has been infected with the metal blood now because she got drill dicked. And so if like you recall, she stands up out of the bathtub to attack him as a zombie and then whips out that bouquet of flowers. And then Metal Maniac erupts from her stomach with the same bouquet of flowers. So I think the bouquet of flowers is a fuck you.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and they're somewhat of an amalgam now.
Yeah, now and that's why he looks different than he did in the beginning. At least we presume he does because he does his hair differently.
Seems to have done his hair and makeup.
He puts makeup on. Yeah. Like you said, we never actually see his face. It's more impressionistic before.
That's right. He puts on lipstick.
So he's like a combination of the girlfriend and Metal Maniac now, and that sort of leads into him saying at the end, "Our love will destroy the entire fucking world."
Yeah, we're gonna merge, and then.
That's how I interpreted that.
That came suddenly, though. Even though they did the flower work, it was kind of the most unhinged thing in the movie, where it just said, "And now they're in love and there's songs."
I think they
like,
really,
Oh yeah, there's suddenly like cheery, jazzy music, as if to say this is a romance beat. Don't forget about that.
I think
when they like tangle together and there's this light explosion and they all writhe around for a while. It's
think
almost
that's funny
like
as
a
hell.
dance number in the middle of this thing.
No,
Right,
it's
right,
that the
right.
same music plays before when he gets hit by the car.
Mhm.
So it's their
Interesting.
it's their lives colliding / combining.
So it's
Yeah.
almost like it's all intentional. Haha.
Yeah.
And it shows the same. There's a shot of I guess you'd call it tracking. I'm not tracking, but the camera. It's the same. It's a continuous shot of where it's filming the words "New World" written in metal across a piece of chain link fence,
Yes.
Yeah.
and the camera just pans across each letter, and it plays the same footage at that point as well.
Well,
So I think it's just them colliding. Yeah.
if it is satire, then the metal piece that says New World is too on the nose. Like if that is what this movie means, I think you biffed it there.
When they show the future landscape and it just looks like a junkyard, like
Yeah.
it's a bit of annihilation, like Abe said, where you can presume that all of the thin, like rebar structures with big bulbous tops are human beings. Then it becomes pretty freaky and horrible.
Mm.
But it's also kind of silly because
interesting.
it just looks like a little erector set.
Yeah,
So-
but you're supposed to imagine that's all the people who
It's
have
all
turned.
the people. Yeah, they've all
I
turned
see.
into metal. Yeah.
Meanwhile, our heroes have formed a two-headed monster with an Uzi.
With a tank, he has a.
He's a
I'm so
tank.
glad you brought up the Uzi. I could not stop laughing at the
Yeah.
Uzi. The fact
The
that he has
fact-
an Uzi.
After all of this, with the chasing each other and the body horror and the turning the metal
We're
inside
gonna
out and the
shoot
dick
some
drills,
people.
he's just going to shoot some guys
He
now
just
with a
has
normal
a gun.
gun.
He picked up a gun. Like
Also
they
has
are
a gun.
they are a 2-person, like 10-foot tall flesh tank at this point. They're a literal tank rolling through the
Some
neighborhood.
Master Blaster
It's the
shit.
equivalent of having like
And he's
a
got an Uzi.
bodyguard.
He just has an Uzi. It's like, I don't
to
think
feel
you
safe.
need it.
Yeah, I think you can basically take over
I think
Japan
we're all set
today.
without the Uzi.
Bit of overkill. Can I just
also
say?
love that-
Oh, go ahead.
I love that he gets high or something, or again, a lot of eroticism in this film. But he sticks himself in the electrical socket several times, like Bender from Futurama.
Yeah.
He does it first to try to kill himself, to stop him from drill dicking his
Then he
girlfriend.
Then
And then
he
he just
finds
is
out.
doing it over and over and over and over again when he just becomes the metal man.
Yeah. Which I guess is just giving into it, right? Giving
He has
up.
lost of his humanity.
I think that's yeah.
But he does, while he's a human, try to kill himself several times. I think the most humanistic part is when he's hidden in the closet going, no, I don't want to have sex with the dick drill. Please don't make me.
Don't make me.
And yet later there's a shot where I swear to God he's trying to self-suck that drill.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Pretty cool.
If I had one of those.
Why
Oh,
not?
boy.
A
Got
little
a drill
missile.
dick going in every direction.
Yeah.
Mhm. And there's
Yep. No, you.
there's something kind of quaint and funny to me about seeing this in the aftermath of, I guess, the world having been converted with their love, and we're all machines now, because that's the reality now, I guess, somewhat. And they kind of, there's a conflation of in this movie of like technology and also just like metal stuff. Like at one point
right.
there's
Just some
foreplay
wire.
that with a fork, right? It's just like, oh, it's a fork also. A fork is also a part
It
of
is
the
metal.
problem.
Hey, it's metal. We got you there. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
going to say one of the most disturbing parts to me, not disturbing, but literally like, I hate that, was when he makes eggs and scratches the pan with the fork really hard, and it just makes
Yeah.
that metal sound of fork scratching pan. And they do a lot of stuff. Actually has pretty incredible sound design, I would say. He feeds her by hand, and as she chews, it makes laser sounds with every bite. And then he feeds her a sausage, and she pretends to like have oral sex on it, which also makes metal scraping sounds for no reason.
For no reason.
Right, and
I
he
know-
hates it.
Yeah,
It's-
and he hates it.
Yeah.
I love the sort of. It's what you got to do if you're going for dark surrealism, right? Is replace certain components, be it sound or visual, with something that shouldn't be that way or shouldn't be there, hopefully something unpleasant. And this movie is a master of that.
Yeah,
if that's the kind of ride you're in for, this is that.
And in this scene, it's literally just, well, he's turning into a robot, so let's replace it with metal noises, robot noises. Yeah. So it's a laser when she's
even though
chewing.
They're eating eggs and sausage.
Right. Yeah. I also just love the impulse of the filmmakers to be like, as soon as that drill dick becomes a thing, which is, it becomes everything once it gets revealed. She's immediately unfazed and is like, I can fix him.
Yeah, I can work this out.
It's so funny to me.
I can save
how that's kind of like they're almost saying that's like, is that a testament to their love? Is that a statement about submission? Like, it's tough to see. I also have thoughts about, is it kind of anti-West in some of its messages? For example, we mentioned the New World thing. Why is it in English? Why is it forks? Like, I don't know. There's just a lot of little hints at maybe it's not like Japanese culture has kind of been erased and kind of replaced with a more global culture, I guess, which is that's kind of on the same brain wavelength of, like the xenophobic economic habits of Japan at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting. I'm just stuck on the drill dick.
I mean, the whole movie's about nightmarish assimilation. So, yeah.
I think so, right?
Yeah.
I think so. Or maybe, or not. Maybe it's just about a guy who loves machines and he's
powers. Yeah. Well, I think that's another way that you do the utterly disturbing or discordant is they fuck with the characters' motivations at certain points where their reactions objectively don't make sense. Like, I'm thinking of in Eraserhead where he has an awkward dinner with his girlfriend's parents and the parents are laughing and crying and you don't understand why they're doing each.
Right.
And in this, there's like the thing where she seems to kill him in the dream and she's upset that he's dying. She's crying, but then she also like licks his nose and eyes like she's into it too.
Right.
So they really use all parts of the animal in terms of using things that contrast starkly to make you feel uncomfortable and make you feel weird. Well, that is very effective here.
Yeah, I was going to say that actually prefaces what she does. Right? Because like her initial reaction is like, I can handle anything. And then he full on beast modes attacks her and she fights him for a long time, stabs him in the neck, kicks him in the face and stuff. And then she is finally submits to it and starts kissing him and they have sex and it kills her.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is it's kind of what happens in the dream.
Yeah, that's true. It's like just a metaphor for, or that's just a simple kind of replacement of it.
Yeah. I like that at one point she stabs him right in the right spot to make the dick drill stop. Like his little reset button. She stabs him in the stomach and it winds down. And then of course then he howls and laughs and it comes back. But yeah. She tries to stab him again and he's too metal now. He just can't be stabbed.
What that drill do?
I like that as he became more metal, he became more impossible to kill, that's true about metal.
What else is true about metal? So I'm revealing my ignorance at this late point in the podcast. He did the hit and run? Yes. Who suffered the hit and run?
The metal maniac.
The maniac.
The metal womb guy. Okay.
Yeah. So,
incidental metal maniac runs out into the street and gets hit by incidental sex maniacs. Mm-hmm. And then their maniacal worlds collide.
And they get Cronenberg's Crash. It gets
exactly.
Sexy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
It's Crash what you did last summer.
Just the fabrication is awesome to think about.
I also love at the end of the movie, I don't know if you stayed long enough, but because it's right before credits start
It's like
rolling.
An hour-long movie.
It's about an hour and 14
minutes.
It's not
that long a movie. Yep. Yeah. Instead of the end, it says game over.
Oh, I did not notice that. That's interesting.
Yeah. And I was like, wait, what? This is a game?
I also noticed as he becomes more metal, there's a shot of him in his apartment and his cats are metal now.
Yeah, his
thought that
cat
was
gets
pretty
consumed by like tin
his-
cans and fish heads.
Cat becomes one of the things. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is like the Shimmer from Annihilation.
It really
it's
is,
just
yeah.
this, mutating kind of physical, contagion. That just
sort of
breaks down everything and
towards-
eats itself.
Towards the end, when he kills his girlfriend, and she zombies out, and then he's like a flesh Hulk fighting Metal Maniac. I started to think of it as a Frankenstein kind of
Little bit.
variation.
Yeah, I started thinking of it as a kaiju thing, and if that was what
By
he
little
meant
monsters?
at the beginning by regular size monster
monsters, yeah.
series. Yeah. Are these like kaiju but regular
Yeah.
size? And they are in a way.
That's how I interpreted that, actually. I was like, oh, okay, this is like them telling us, okay, this is like Godzilla but smaller.
It is.
Which is interesting because that almost roots it in a sensible piece of pop culture that I know, and that made it less creepy to me. Like once it becomes a superhero battle or a kaiju battle at the end, I was immediately the part of my brain that was in fear and dread the whole movie let go, because I know what a superhero kaiju battle looks like, and it basically did play out like that. Like that was the end of the weird, surreal, fucked up
Very
stuff.
Akira.
He literally had metal powers, and they punch each other, and then they meld into each other.
Yeah, that's one thing that I kind of was disappointed in, because I really like the setup
I'll
of
agree.
regular
Yeah.
size monster series,
Same.
the concept that it's like, yeah, no, they don't all have to be big, but in the end, that's what he did. He just made them bigger. It's not a kaiju in terms of scale, but more or less narratively, it's the same
Yeah.
story.
I think it was more of the monster is the idea, right? Or the infection. And the threat is how it spreads.
Yeah.
The threat is the
Yeah.
spread, Abe.
Okay.
Yeah, I see that. Because at the very end, they super speed all around the town like a Burning Man art car, and we see them turning stuff into metal,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
As they
Yeah,
just
and all
claimed
metal,
they would.
like
The whole
melting and
world's gonna be
fusing.
metal.
And yeah.
Pretty dope.
Yeah.
As
But I think it's funny that you can aim the same gripe that I aim at Marvel movies at this, which is, did it have to end with a big superhero fight where they just beat each other? Everything ends that way.
Yeah, it was. That is.
I love that.
I guess this gets credit for being back in the day.
Yeah, and
but
the effects
still.
are cool.
1989.
But,
I mean,
Uh,
that's the point
yeah.
of Marvel movies, Michael.
Is Tetsuo the Iron Man?
No, no,
That's
well,
what they're going for?
Big
They've failed.
superhero fight at the end. That's what everyone's waiting for. That's everyone's cashing in. Everyone wants that little piece.
I guess so.
Right? I mean,
Well,
or am I wrong?
There have been very particular Marvel movies where that shouldn't have been how it ended, like Scarlet Witch, the show, WandaVision. Anyway, I digress. Tetsuo the Iron Man. But I do think that's interesting is how many things it reminded me of. Like it also has flavor from like La Jetée.
Nice.
You could compare it to Mad God.
Yeah.
And like I said, Eraserhead wise, it even has the key shot from Eraserhead that is the cover of Eraserhead, which is the guy's face lit really provocatively with particles in the black behind him, just white particles. It looked exactly like that shot from Eraserhead. And I say this all as a compliment. I think this movie obviously has vision, and it's a compelling vision because of how many things it reminds me of that are also compelling.
And no budget.
And no budget. Right.
I kind of wanted to talk about that because I think that's well said. I think that's appropriately reflects my opinion of the film too.
It's a seminal work in many ways.
And since it's only 60 minutes, I feel like anyone can go track it down. It's really easy. You can buy it on anywhere you buy videos, but I actually found on the Internet Archive it has there's a version of it.
Oh,
It's
nice.
on Shudder.
I think it's
It's pretty available.
archive.org.
It's pretty available.
It's on Apple.
Yeah, but
if you pay the rental fee.
do
yeah.
what you want to do. I'm not saying you should go pirate things, but it is available on the internet.
But if we convince someone who hasn't seen this to watch this, I think we will have done a good deed for them.
I think so.
I
It's
will-
yeah.
I will say it's not an easy watch. It's 60 minutes, but it
not.
felt twice as long.
You kind of have to be in,
Much like a dick
you
drop.
do you like are you cool with experimental film, and does The Fly delight you? If you're in that Venn diagram between the two of those things, you'll be a-okay with this movie. I didn't want to,
especially if you liked the deleted scene from The Fly, where he vomits on an old woman's face and melts it and then slurps it up, which they just decided was too much for the movie. Yeah,
that was the line, apparently, Cronenberg. So
slurping a face off.
I kind of wanted to talk about the production a little bit, because we are talking about how it's kind of, what a dream to make movies in this way, where you're kind of just amateur, and then you get critical success. People talk about your movie gets seen, and in 2024, it's still relevant. It's
considered a cult classic.
That's pretty cool, right? Not all movies that do well or, have that story are made in the way that it's a loving experience for the cast and crew. By the end of it, and where it's kind of flashes of like a completely different Hollywood version of this, it's kind of like Waterworld. People hated the production. Most of the crew by the end left. They just straight out said, nope, not gonna work on this show anymore.
The actor who plays the womb guy must have been such a trooper. He's submerged in milky water,
doubled down
with wires every time.
Also, I want to say something. If you are an animal lover, the cat was clearly distressed. They don't have PETA rules in Japan, so they will just glue horrible shit to a cat, and that's what they do in this movie.
Which, once again, thanks Theo for the animal injuries.
The last one had a kangaroo's throat getting slit. Thanks, Theo.
Thanks, Theo. You truly are
the infamy of Milo and Otis.
Right. So all these people are leaving the film because I think stressful work conditions, and probably they weren't very nice. That's usually enough.
Paid much,
I can't speak to it. I didn't find any in my research. But by the end of it, the filmmaker and the lead actor, the guy who plays the salaryman, were doing most of it. They were filming each other. In fact, he gets a cinematographer credit. So, at a certain point, it was just the actors doing all the work. And you can kind of tell on some of the shots that it's like there's picturesque lighting, and then suddenly the movie is just really struggling. But more or less did really good job. But it's just funny to think about how films used to be made in that way.
Many of the shots are just straight up compelling, especially because of the light.
That hallway shot near the end of the train chase, or the train platform chase. I love the shot where he hides in the bathroom and it looks down on him, and there's a grate, so it's almost like you feel like everything in the world is metal surrounding him, and he's getting absorbed.
I also liked, for that chase, it was a sequence of intercut, jump cut shots facing the ceiling.
Yeah.
Which now you might see if someone's being rushed into the operating room, right, on the gurney. But it's not really POV. It's not implied that that's his vision. It's just how we're choosing to show this space.
It's frenetic.
There's a lot of shot decisions that are really compelling or random. There's some where I go, I don't know if that was compelling or just a random decision. And I think that's what we mean when we say punk rock, the willingness to try stuff, and it doesn't even matter if it all works, because fuck you.
Yeah, a little bit of that. A little bit of fuck you.
There's a little bit of fuck you throughout this movie.
Yeah, for watching this.
Yeah, so I just wanted to point out that, sometimes you make a film and your crew leaves, that's how it was made. And then you have to live in
early days of Agents of Cracked. We would call cut, and then me and the other actors would pick up all the lights and move them where they needed to be next.
Right, because I couldn't have a crew. And then season 2, we got a crew, and that was pretty baller, That was pretty sick. But that's the kind of, when you're really bare bones in it, you're running and gunning, which they were. I'm surprised they got so many amazing locations. For a small indie, they got huge industry areas that there was no people around.
With no people or cars in the background.
I don't know how they achieve that, if that's just how it exists now, if there's a story behind the locations they used. Most of it happens in a house, which is a smart decision, but also they're running down with stop motion down the street, which I think is really smart, because the streets probably had people all the time crossing and stuff. But if you shoot it stop motion, you can just wait for the moment that there aren't there, and then you take a photo. And then when you seam it all together, people are gone. So it's like, what a smart decision to probably answer a production issue. And it is kind of one of the charms of the movie, those sequences.
A
where
documentary
on
about the
boots.
making of this movie would be fascinating for these reasons. Yeah,
I wonder if that
seeing
was
how they
made.
solved problems and what the problems were would be really interesting to me.
Yeah, and I don't know. Honestly, I just don't know how they did the wire time lapse. I think they just straight up animated it like style, like in terms of
Probably.
or not,
I assume they probably coated pipe cleaners in wire coating and just did it frame by frame.
frame by frame.
Just
yeah,
painstakingly.
and just moved the wire.
Yeah.
Which is just insane.
Yeah,
that's
sucks.
an insane thing to do. That sucks, but it gives you the sense that it's alive. It's very cool, very, very cool.
Yeah, and the stop motion on the streets also it gives a little bit of an anime tinge to it with like the rocket ankles, so you get a sense of how fast they're moving too, without having to spend any money on effects. Really.
Yeah. Oh, I was wrong earlier. The short that was made that became this was shot in 8mm. This was shot in 16mm, of course.
Oh, so there's an even shorter version. Interesting.
There is the Phantom of regular size.
Regular.
I love just
series.
regular size.
Yeah.
Regular size Phantom.
Regular size Rudy.
I'm regular size.
Yeah, regular
Gonna
size
get you.
Rudy.
Yeah.
You said Womb Guy doubled down. Was there a specific story behind that, or do you just mean?
I mean, just
generally
that he
goes
was
hard?
operating camera at one point.
Oh,
and
right,
shooting
okay.
His
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
reverses because there's literally no one else on
Yeah.
set.
And he's actually not in most of the movie.
Yeah, like he's alone is the point.
Well,
like,
and his
when you do
legs
see
are
him,
really
he's
strong
alone.
with metal, so he was
That's
probably
true. Yeah,
good
he's
at
got all that
tripoding.
rebar.
Yeah, human tripod.
During post-production, another thing is we talked about at the beginning of this podcast, we talked about the industrial techno music or whatever, like the industrial pots and pans being banged around. That's pretty sick. So when he was cutting, Tsukamoto, who's the filmmaker, was editing it, and I read on this is just Wikipedia trivia, he found himself emotionally and physically exhausted because he kept hearing the loud banging noises from the sound effects over and over again for months. And it's just one of those things that like no one ever thinks about the editor. If you ever find like a really like, oh, that's a tough thing to watch in a movie, you watched it once. Imagine the editor.
Right.
They are broken now. They have been broken. You know, like the editor for like Come and See or Solo or some
Right,
shit.
Antichrist.
Yeah, exactly.
Speak No Evil.
So,
Have you guys seen Speak No Evil?
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
Oh, no,
that
I
one's
haven't.
fucked.
Would it be a bitch to edit? Is that what you're saying?
There would be some scenes that you would be bummed about having to watch a bunch of times.
Sure. I mean, not to get too grim, I guess I will get grim, but I always think of like those Holocaust documentaries that are good
sure.
documentaries, but imagine editing it from all the source footage. Ooh.
Imagine putting together all however many hours of Showa.
Yeah.
Yeah, how do you go
Damn.
home with that? You have to have like kind of a constitution that's off the charts, right? Because you got to go back to work and you take a day off, but it's like it's still in my brain, man. Because I don't know, if you've ever had, I know that Michael has, but if you've had a lot of time editing, like it's just series and series of earworms and eye worms in terms of like. That's not getting out of my head anymore because I kept pressing play on that one section. Now it's a GIF in my mind.
Right,
It's a loop and it's endless and it will never go away from my brain. And so even if you want to get away from it, it's still kind of inside you. And it's I don't know. Being an editor, it's something that people don't talk about for like especially horror films and such.
Oh, he did Dead or Alive 2, and he did Kamen Rider, however you say that. And he did Tetsuo the Bullet Man. And he did Tetsuo 2, Body Hammer.
Oh, I was
I
wrong. Apparently, there's a sequel to this shit.
Yeah, that is amazing to me how much he's done. Okay, I'm going to go through this guy's filmography.
Yeah, let me revise that. I need to know how this guy interprets the phrase "the body hammer."
Right. We used to call
it's not a drill this time.
We used to call Abe the Body Hammer. That's a true story. His
true.
body is a hammer. So
you used to say that all
I'm
the
looking
time.
for more insight into that whole situation. I like Tetsuo the Bullet Man. I feel like I can already imagine, right? I can write that one writes itself.
Fire me, boy.
Yeah.
It's just something the body does when you
Something the body does when it's shaken.
Nothing lightens up the tone like, Bullet.
Bullet Man. I think we can probably end it there. I mean, it's at this point it's about
almost as long as the film.
movie.
Yeah. It's a shorter movie, so I ran out of notes a little early, but I hope Theo is satisfied.
I hope you're satisfied, Theo, and thank you for your patronage. Be like Theo. Do the thing.
Yeah. And head over, I'm going to say this sometimes from now on, head over to our shop tab on the Patreon page, the shop tab. Right now, the only thing available is my novel, although that's pretty cool. But very soon, there's going to be a comic book there and a rap album there. So that's all over at patreon.com/smallbeans/shop.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Hell yeah.
Do it.
Let's get it.
Thomas.
Buy those beans with your beans. Use your beans to buy some beans.
It's your turn to move units and get beans, Thomas. Where can people throw beans at you?
If you have any more leftover beans, you can throw beans at Gamefully Unemployed. Head over to patreon.com/GamefullyUnemployed. It's the podcast network and streaming network I run with David Bell. We have all kinds of cool original podcasts. And some exclusive stuff too. So we do movie nights and patron produced podcast series, a whole bunch of stuff. So check that out. We do a whole lot of stuff that you should
That's
peek
right.
into.
You've announced Batical, which is like an improv podcast project. I'm excited for that.
I hope you don't cut us from it because that was fun.
We're absolutely not kidding. No.
Because our love will ruin this whole fucking world is really what we're trying to get across.
Yeah, our rust will turn it to dust.
Yeah,
that's the goal. That's the goal.
Oh, and you mentioned one thing I do want to be more active about. You mentioned you do movie nights, and those are Friday nights, and they're a lot of fun. We do, Small Beans does Monday nights, so we kind of like tag team your week, you know?
Yeah.
We kind of...
Yeah, we're double teaming your week from both ends.
We spit roast your week.
That's right.
And come on by the Discord for Small Beans. You can find it on our Patreon page, or you can email us at allthesmallbeans, and we'll hit you up with a link or whatever, and then you can come every Monday night at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard
Monday
Time.
night. Yeah.
You can
guaranteed
fucking watch me and Michael live watch movies that we curate. It's pretty fun. There's a good group of people there.
An episode of Legend of Korra as we watched last Monday.
2 episodes.
Who knows what you'll get? Yeah, that's true. It's a two-parter.
Uh-huh.
All right.
That's it.
I think we're good.
Yeah.
We love you.